And in the last video, I asked you if your weather was as wonky as ours, and boy, did you respond. And I read every single one of those comments, from Paris, France, to Australia, to Germany, to Connecticut, to Dallas, Texas, Oregon. It seems universal that whatever weather you had, it is different than it usually is. And your weather has been uncharacteristically cool, dry, or warm. In most cases, it seems to me that it has been an uncharacteristically cool and wet spring for you guys. I find that absolutely fascinating, and I loved reading every one of your comments. So since I really kind of like to get a glimpse into your world, what I want to know today, if you would respond in the comments below, is now that hopefully the weather has dried out or changed, or even if you're still in a weather pattern, what's the first thing you're going to do? What's the first thing you're going to tackle in your garden when you can finally get out there, when it's dry enough, or wet enough, or cool enough, or warm enough? What is the first project that you're going to tackle once you can finally get out there? So please comment below. I cannot tell you how I love to live vicariously through you guys and what you're experiencing in your respective areas. Okay, so now for kind of a deep dive into this space. I call it my gravel dining deck. So I'm going to do just exclusively a tour of this kind of confined space, because I get so many questions, and a lot of you are new followers and you don't know the evolution of how this space really came to be. So as I've said ad nauseum, when we first moved into this house 30 years ago, there really wasn't anything here. There was an old redbud tree, but that was pretty much it. There was nothing out in the garden other than that redbud tree, and basically, again, some hard pan clay. So this has all evolved over time. What we did immediately, and again, you guys, I'm not formally trained. A lot of it I have just intuited. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but it seems to resonate with people. But I really didn't know what I was doing. And it's only over lots of years of reading, looking at other gardens, and kind of referencing what I thought my own personal style was, that I came up with this solution. So the evolution is that when we first moved in, we had decking, redwood decking, that was from here, and it went all the way back to the house and to the window box, and it connected to the house. And then there were some shallow steps that went down from here and went down into the yard. And it was fine for years. There was a railing around it. My kids were little, and it was okay. But over time, even being a redwood deck, which is, by the way, pretty expensive to install, over time, despite good care and maintenance, it finally needed to be replaced. Some nails started to jut out from the planks. It started to get splintery in my little boy's feet, and ultimately it needed to be replaced. And I was actually glad at that point, because a lot of things had bothered me about it stylistically, and one of them being that the language it spoke to me was a lot more suburbia than it was English Tudor. And so I really wanted to change that and make something that resonated a little bit more with my house. So by that time, I had read lots of books. I had done lots of research on English gardens, and this is kind of the stylistic and design solution I came up with. So if you'll come over here, originally, when you walked out of my back door, you walked out onto the grade of the deck, and there was no level change until you got all the way to the end of the deck, just beyond my dining table. So this was all on grade. It was all at one level, and then there were some steps that went down this way and some steps that went down into the yard and into the area that I called the bistro area. So when I came up with this change, I just consulted with the landscaper that I have worked with for years, who is actually going to do the work. And I told him that what I wanted was an expansive, what I call a landing and launch pad, which is how I think of your back door steps and the area just off of your door, whether it's in the front yard or the backyard. I think of this as kind of my landing and launch pad. I wanted it to be of stone because I wanted it to match existing materials on my house, and my house is made of brick and stone. So we selected flagstone that matched the color of the stone on my house. And he gave me a very, very spacious first step. And I wanted it to be large enough for two reasons. Number one, we have a wood-burning fireplace in my kitchen, so I wanted it large enough to hold the firewood rack that we keep out here just outside the back door so we could easily access it. And I also wanted it to be large enough to accommodate my topiary terraced plant stand. By the way, this came from Gardener's Supply because I know you'll ask. And so it does both. And actually, there's still pretty easy access. Is it a little too crowded? Yes, and I hope to remedy that. But nevertheless, there's still pretty easy access in two different directions. One, these steps that come down onto the dining deck, and then also I can kind of navigate my way this way down towards the gate and my utilitarian area. So that way I have ingress and egress in both ways, but it's one continuous step that wraps around. So you can see that there are three shallow steps that wrap around completely and meet up with the brick wall or the flower bed there on the other side. The other thing that I wanted to do was make sure that the steps were fairly shallow. I really didn't want a deep rise. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't so deep that it would be difficult for my kiddos, short legs, or for, at that time, my mother-in-law, who had trouble with really deep steps to get in and get out. So I wanted a fairly shallow tread, which I got. And then I also, stylistically, I wanted to make sure that in some way I incorporated some brick into the design as well. So we did half brick risers. And there's a little bit of a lip of this flagstone that sticks out and projects out over these half brick risers. So I love the look of this. I love the way that it's gotten moldy over time. I would never think to do a power wash on that beautiful mold. I love the way it looks, and I love the way that they have aged over time. Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to put a deep lip on that is because this is an old house, and getting it into the 21st century hasn't been easy. So I've got cable lines and such that run right underneath the lip. So if you're standing up, you really can't see them. It gives a way to camouflage them and protects them to a certain degree underneath that lip. Plus it creates interesting shadows, and I just like the way I look. The other thing is, even though the rise is not real dramatic, I love the fact that even these secondary steps are wide, and they're wide enough so I can have large planters. So you don't feel it's a slow passage from the back door down to the gravel dining deck, because the steps are wide and spacious, versus when we first moved in, before we put on the original wood deck, there was nothing but a set of crumbling, I might add, concrete steps that were very steep that came out of the back door 1, 2, 3 and immediately to the ground, and they were very, very difficult to walk on, to navigate, and to carry anything up. So we immediately got rid of those, and this then is the second iteration of what we did to make it stylistically match my house. Now, At the time, it was kind of risky for me. Again, I'm not formally trained, and so I wondered if what I was doing was crazy. But I had seen so many garden spaces and living areas on English Tudor homes, literally in England and in Europe, that used gravel extensively. So what we did was put in just huge pieces of flagstone in primary tread areas that went to either the gate or to the backyard area or were underneath the dining furniture. And we used really large flagstone in those spaces, and then in between the voids we put gravel. Now, so many of you have asked, did I put down any kind of weed barrier, any kind of that, you know, the black weed barrier? No, we did not. All we did was level it to the extent possible. We put down a layer of very, not necessarily attractive, but just very functional crushed gravel underneath, had more of a commercial look. And then we came on top and we put in a beautiful, natural looking pea gravel on top. And I do love gravel, as you guys know. So it immediately had the flavor of an English garden. It has been much more flexible, much more adaptive to changes that I have wanted to make in the garden over time. And I have been extremely pleased with it. So much so that when I started helping other people with their gardens, that I incorporated it into their designs. The other nice thing about it is it requires minimal upkeep. It's inexpensive. The gravel is relatively inexpensive. It looks good over time. And some of you ask me, well, does it bother me if, you know, I track in gravel or whatever? Not really. And not a lot of it gets tracked in, partly because, again, the primary areas where you walk are these large flagstone areas. And even if you come out here barefoot, the same is true. Now, it may not be comfortable to walk barefoot on gravel, but by the same token, it wasn't very comfortable to walk barefoot on that really, really hot redwood with splinters in it. So I think there's just changes and compensations for whatever decisions you decide to make. Now, over time, so then what that did was this entire area, which used to have a step down here, was now completely flat. So that gave me all options I didn't have before that. I was able to put in a seating area over here that I address as the bistro, kind of like a living room area, and then a dining deck over here. At the same time we put in those steps, we put in some stone steps over here that come off of the area where Hubs and I sit right in front of the fireplace. This has a steeper grade to it, partly because this area doesn't get nearly as much use, and I wanted more square footage out here and less square footage coming down out of that door. So that creates a nice area. When we first put in this area, this deck, there was a huge triple trunk river birch tree over here, which came down in an ice storm. So when we redid some things, I just expanded this gravel area. We put in some matching brick in a herringbone pattern. So I have exactly the same hardscaping features on my deck area that were on my house. Now, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done in this space. It's been so wet and I've been pretty busy, but you can kind of already see after the storm, all of this, an Arctic blast, all of this Nandina had completely frozen to the ground. It's come out again, so I have nice verticality here on the edges. I feel very contained once we sit inside here. I told you how I put I needed something just to fill these pots, and I just put in some kind of sad looking amaryllis bulbs that had finished blooming, and look at how big they're already getting, and this will make just really good contents for both of these containers. And I put an Encore azalea in here. So this is the area that I'm going to tackle next, you guys, because it's right off of my house. Normally I already have this primed and staged and ready for frequent use, but because it's been so cool and rainy, first of all, we haven't been able to use it, and I really haven't been able to get out here and really style it the way I want to. So once I get some consistent good weather, I'll go back in here, finish planting the window box, get this area mulched, and I think it will be ready for use. And this area over here is kind of new to this space this year, where we put in I put in this kind of what I call a geranium theater over here to replace my 2 huge boxwood topiary that I lost in the Arctic blast. So you can see when Stuart kind of does a sweep to the backyard, you can see how it all flows together, and how the interface between the gravel deck and the lawn area culminates in that brick border. And then a little bit later, maybe this weekend, I want to do a video that kind of explains some of the things that I think make my garden look the way it does. Whether you like that or you don't, but certain stylistic touches that really give it a signature look that I think is very much my own, and I'll describe those in the next video. So, thank you guys for taking my little gravel deck tour. Stuart, if you don't mind kind of panning around to show people what it looks like from this angle. And make sure to please let me know in the comments below what you are going to tackle next once the weather changes in your area. Have a great day, you guys. So those of you who held on to the end and want a little fashion epilogue, here is my outfit for today, which is not necessarily gardening attire. I admit I'm getting ready to go to a meeting after we shoot this. So here's my ensemble for today and sourcing information. The shoes are actually Steve Madden mules. And I think years ago I got them off of Amazon. There are so many versions of these, you guys, and I'm going to put some of my favorite links on Amazon to similar style shoes below. These are really comfortable. I like them, and I love the fact that you can just slip them on and off. So my jeans are the same ones I had on last week. They're Calvin Klein's. I got them at Nordstrom Rack, and pretty much, if I'd be curious your response here, I pretty much wear a pair of jeans a week, and then I wash them, and then I get another pair for the next week. The top, which is actually one of my favorite tops, and let me show you the back. That lacing is really, really cute. This is Suzanne Garver, I believe, whoever that is. But you guys, this was a thrift store find. I got it at Goodwill, I think for like $3 or $4. And whenever I go to the Goodwill store, I always look for neutrals. I love the shape of this. I love the fact that it is loose and kind of long sleeve, so it protects my arms. It looks great under a jacket for layering, so I really like that. My earrings, what do I have on? If I really like garden boots, I really like earrings also. So I have a lot of garden boots and I have a lot of earrings, and I wear them all. The nice thing about earrings is they're not very expensive. I can have a lot of them. They don't take up a lot of space, and I just really like the fact that they can really zhuzh up an outfit that's otherwise kind of plain. So I really like statement earrings, and the necklace was a present from Hubs. So there you go. There's my ensemble for today, compliments of Amazon, Nordstrom Rack, and the Goodwill store.